Dora reproaches her father and Herr K, Mr. K, because she wishes to conceal self-reproaches. She would reproach herself, but she doesn't want to. So she projects it outwardly onto other people. Namely, this guy who supposedly hit on her. And as we see later, not even her father believes that there was an actual come-on. Now, see if this next bit sounds like a clinician trying to help a patient, or does it sound like a psychotic, evil person doing irresponsible things to someone who's come to him for help. You decide. To relax Dora's intellectual tenacity, Freud's tactic was to insinuate a set of self-suspicions. So just kept saying, "Are you sure that's the way you feel? Look deep in your mind. Are you sure?" Until he builds up these suspicions, until he managed to convince her that she was too logical and reasoned too closely for her own good. He was saying, you're just hiding from your real motives in logic and reason. The logic and reason are covering up what you really want or desire, or what's the real key to your suffering. You can't use your logic and reason to get to the real key to your suffering. So give it up. Alright, next page. And this is related. We skip a bit, but it's perfectly related. It could just be the next sentence after that one. For the patient, Freud advocated a balanced, flexible standard of reason. Right? We don't want the old rigid definition of reason and logic. We're going to go with a balanced one instead of an unbalanced one. We're going to go with a flexible one instead of a rigid one. Here's what Freud's standard of reason was. Persisting too long in any train of thought resigns omnipotence to that train of thought. So if you have your view of what's reasonable and logical, and you just continue with it and you won't be stirred from your ways, then you have left logic and reason behind, and you're just treating it as omnipotence. So to be really logical and reasonable, we have to leave logic and reason to the side sometimes. We have to be flexible and balanced about it. I mean, yikes. I mean, Jesus Christ. Now, we would say, well, didn't Freud persist in his views? Didn't he believe in this stuff year after year after year? Wasn't he persisting for a long time in a particular train of thought? So, that's true. In a curiously exact way, Freud's own therapeutic habits meet all the requirements of neurotic brilliance. He had, therefore, pausing for a second, Freud set up these criteria and stuff. Freud is the one who said this, and this is true about the mind and subconscious and stuff. Freud sets this stuff out, but then it's obvious that Freud himself must be neurotic. So, quote, he had therefore to exempt himself at least as an analyst from the critique of excessive ratiocination. Ratiocination is a word for all the stuff we've just been talking about, how you have to leave logic and reason to the side sometimes, and that's more reasonable. It's more reasonable to leave logic and reason to the side sometimes because you want to be balanced and flexible. Quote, Freud saw little contradiction in his double standard of reason. He derogated conventional insight for tending to suppress unauthorized trains of thought. So he said people who are thinking about these things today are leaving aside trains of thought that people don't use. And that's bad. We should use trains of thought that haven't been used before and are different and are unexpected and flexible and balanced. Freud was too aware of the profound and irredeemable irrationality of life to become a fanatic of reason. So Freud understood that life is completely irrational, and so there's no way he could become a fanatic of reason. He's in on this. He knows something about the mind and life. Well, that's the end of the introduction. On to page 1, actually, or this is page 21, but we're going to skip the first few paragraphs. And this is Freud now. If it is true that the causes of hysterical disorders are to be found in the intimacies of the patient's psychosexual life, right? Your mental well-being is from your psychosexual life. If that's true, and the hysterical symptoms are the expression of their most secret and repressed wishes, so if you have symptoms of hysteria, it's because you're repressing what you really want to do. Then the complete exposition of a case of hysteria is bound to involve the revelation of those intimacies and the betrayal of those secrets. But we could have cut the end of that off, and you just see his premise there, that the psychosexual life is at the basis of neuroses, and hysterical symptoms are caused by sexual repression. Weird. Weird. Now he talks about dream interpretation, quote page 24 now. The material which elucidated the case was grouped around 2 dreams. One related in the middle of the treatment and one at the end. So he looks into dreams for meaning. Now I just have to say, we still don't have, dreams are still not useful for much. I know dreams can be extraordinarily powerful. They can be, and dreams are for defragmenting, as I've heard it said. Dreams are for sorting out your mind. And they've done tests on people by keeping them awake, stopping them as soon as their mind drops into REM sleep, as soon as their brain waves change over to REM sleep, they wake them up, so that they're able to get, light sleep, twilight sleep. But when they go into REM, they wake them up. These people have extraordinary problems concentrating. They actually fall asleep and go straight into REM with their eyes open. That's happened in clinical trials, or clinical studies, or experiments, or whatever. They actually had things keeping the person's eyes open so he couldn't close his eyes, and they said when the light goes on, he hit the buzzer, and he was able to do it, and then eventually he didn't do it, and the light went off, and they said, why didn't you hit the buzzer? And he was a little out of it, and then he said, the light didn't go on, and his eyes were open. There's no way it couldn't. His brain shut down his sensory organs to start sorting itself out. That's what the brain has to do once in a while. It has to stop taking sensory input and work through the stuff that it's gotten. Now, it's no big mystery. It's like animals have to do something at nighttime. Humans have evolved, like apes and monkeys. They've evolved for their brain to do something at night. The brain sorts things out at night. And it would be different if we were in a world with 24-hour sunlight, maybe, but that's not the type of world we evolved on. So your brain does something at night. Surprise! But to think that you can look into dreams as some infallible way of figuring out a person's psychology, in some cases there may be interesting notes about dreams, but to treat them, as Freud does, as an essential way to get into a person's mind, and as evidence for psychoanalyzing the person, is dangerous and bizarre. Now I have to say that dream interpretation is not different from some form of mysticism. Okay? It's not science. It's not medicine. It is some form of non-scientific, non-rational fairy tale making to interpret dreams. So, and Freud says the material which elucidated the case was grouped around 2 dreams. So it's essential and central to some of his work, to a lot of his work. He says, quote, "In the year 1900 I gave precedence to a laborious and thorough study of dreams." Now if you want to look into this, it's called DIED, that's a German feminine for the Traumdeutung, Traumdeutung.